At the beginning of the week, James Comey and Mike Rogers. Now, my understanding is this is not just the first time that James Comey has said this in public, and he was authorized to do so by the acting attorney general, who is not well, I should say not the acting, but the acting one in the context of this specific case, because Jeff Sessions has recused himself, who's an Obama appointee. It's my understanding this is the first time that he is briefed after doing the public briefing of the Congressional Intelligence Committee. He did a private briefing. And it's my understanding it's the first time that he admitted to them even the existence of this investigation. Is that your understanding too?
That is my understanding. And you recall that before that, there was a lot of bitching and moaning on the part of the committee members about how Comey wasn't being forthcoming, and this was going to be the big thing. I had assumed, though, that he had said that he had more or less admitted that that this was happening in some way or another, but apparently not. I mean, from what we understand, this really was the first time that he admitted. Well, you can understand why when you see what happened subsequently in the week, why Comey was reluctant to give any kind of details about what they were investigating, or even that they were investigating, to the committee, because clearly the Republicans on the committee, led by the committee chairman, Devin Nunes,
former Trump transition official,
that, he and the rest of the Republicans, I mean, Peter King as well, but, a bunch of them, they simply can't be trusted with this information, even though they're on the Intelligence Committee. They're clearly just acting solely as agents of President Trump. And that was made clear in the committee hearing, which was it was one of the most fascinating committee hearings that I've ever seen. Because here you had this, I mean, this is if this pans out, if suspicions are correct, that there was coordination between the Trump members, quote, associates of the Trump campaign, and the agents of the Russian government, that is potentially the biggest scandal in American history. I mean, it is beyond imagining that the president of the United States, that his presidential campaign was actually coordinating with a foreign country, and yet that is the substance of the investigation, as we found out. And we had known this, so there had been leaks to that effect, but hearing the FBI director actually say it was and say that he had permission from the Justice Department to reveal that information, et cetera, that, it was a very serious kind of moment. You're going, wow. The Democrats, questioned the two witnesses, Rogers and Comey, the way one would expect under that kind of hearing, under the auspices of that hearing, where we're hearing that there is this investigation going on. The Republicans, on the other hand, all they could talk about were leaks. Now, these are not people who don't leak. They do leak. The Benghazi hearing was hearings were a cacophony of leaks. That whole story was of the Benghazi and the emails and the rest were led by leaks for years. I mean, they went on from 2012 on. There was nothing but leaks. But suddenly they're very concerned about national
security. Devin Nunes leaked less than 24 hours after getting out of that hearing.
Exactly. I mean, this idea that they are suddenly very, very, very concerned about the national security implication of leaking. This was all they could talk about. It was all they was, Ms. Comey, FBI Director Comey, you've got to investigate the leaks, and completely avoided this question of whether or not there was a Russian investigation. Now, what that tells us is that the Republicans are, we're not seeing any Howard Bakers here, right? I mean, that's not happening, at least not yet. So it was a very startling kind of event. And then what happens, I was almost unbelievable to me. I mean, I couldn't believe, I was watching, I was on my computer, and I've got the TV on in the background, as I usually do, and suddenly I see this thing where, Devin Nunes comes out and gives a press conference saying that he's found specific information that indicates that there really was surveillance of the Trump transition team. This happened, what was it, 2 days later? On Wednesday, the hearing was on Monday. Obviously a leak, right? I mean, he's leaking that he's heard this thing about classified information.
Right.
And that he's racing to the White House to brief them on it. I mean, this is you're shaking your head going, what in the hell is going on here? And of course, that was based upon, his trying to help Donald Trump cover for his 4 a.m., tweet tantrum from a couple of weeks ago, where he accused Obama personally of wiretapping him based on some Breitbart gossip.
Let me stop you there for a moment. Let me stop you there for a moment. That's what Nunes, basically, or that's based upon the information that Nunes is telling us he told.
Right.
Because I think it's quite a coincidence that the day after the first time he is briefed in closed session as to the scope and the evidence of this investigation, I think it's quite a coincidence that he then heads to the White House because he's got some other information. I mean, I think the idea that there isn't a default belief, and I haven't seen this in the news coverage at all, but the idea that there isn't a default belief that he didn't go over there to dump every bit of information he was given by James Comey into the White House, I think is I mean, it's sort of shocking to me, right? Like, I mean, this is the first time he's briefed into this, and he's going over there to tell them whether or not there's ongoing. I mean, it's quite possible he went over there to say, like, look, you're still in contact with people who are being surveilled, so you have to watch what you say to them. He could have said, the Comey has X, Y, Z. They have this narrative. They have that narrative. When you are ultimately questioned by them, understand what they have, right? Because the way that Comey's going to go about this is he's going to nail people for lying to him when they finally end up having some type of sit-downs and interviews. And I think Nunes went over there and gave them everything. And the only way he could do that was to do this little kabuki theater that he has some other secret information that is really not that relevant, that is just a sidestep and whatnot. And that's why he's not showing it to anybody, because I don't even think he has it. And to the extent that he has it, it's nothing. And that was just because if I'm Nunes and I realize that the reason why James Comey is telling me this stuff today, as opposed to 3 weeks ago, because James Comey suspects that I'm going to go and help him quash the investigation, for all I know, James Comey is surveilling me. And the only one way I could go and deliver that information is to do it this way. Right? It's not like he can sneak into the back of that.
That is interesting.
I mean, I this is all speculation on my part, but it's also the most reasonable explanation. Like, it would be an amazing coincidence that the day after he is read into a private briefing, that somebody else who, according to him, is not the head of an agency, gave him information that was far less damaging to the president, and he delivered that information to the president. I mean, that seems like, wow, what a coincidence.
Well, that is interesting because that explains certain aspects of this that really were kind of, bizarrely inexplicable before. One is that he was refusing to share what he has, this information, with other members of the committee, even other Republicans. That's weird. I mean, they're all under the same obligation to keep this stuff secret. There's no reason that he couldn't at least, maybe he should even give up his source on this to the Intelligence Committee. They're also under obligation to keep that secret, but he won't do it. He's refusing all the way down the line. And all of that, I'm going, well, why? I mean, even
theoretically,
if it was
this stuff is going to end up at the committee anyways, right? I mean,
exactly. That was the whole idea. And the thing is that, I mean, even if it was innocuous, even if it was just, what people are saying that maybe there was some intercepts, in fact, even that were maybe emails that were intercepted that mentioned the Trump transition, members in it. It didn't even necessarily mean they were in on the conversation or the email, that they just came up and their names came up. And his whole thing about how well they weren't properly masked, well, those emails are never properly masked. That's an ongoing issue for civil liberties advocates, that, they never mask them quite as well as they should be. But whatever the case, that's the kind of thing he could show that to Schiff and say, look, this is me really concerned and blah, blah, blah. And Schiff could go, oh, come on, it's nothing. And, there's nothing in that would change Nunes' apparent motivation for being concerned about it. But the fact that he won't show it does indicate that maybe there's nothing to show. And it makes you wonder, why did he have to run up to the White House? And if it's the case that he's worried that he is personally being surveilled, well, that makes perfect sense. That's the one place where he could talk about it.
I'm not the only person here who saw Silver Streak, right? I mean, when
exactly.
when Richard Pryor and what's his face go Gene Wilder, they go big, right? When they go big when they want to, and so he has no other choice. I mean, he has no other choice. If he wants to get this information to the White House, he has no other mechanism in which to do this, it seems to me, but to do what he just did. And none of it makes sense. I mean, none of it makes sense that he won't share this information now, that it's really incidental information, that the nature of the information changes, that it came from some type of super secret source. I mean, none of it makes sense. Except for the fact that he knew, like, look, this could be my last chance to go over there, and get them up to speed so that they know exactly where the FBI is in the investigation. And then Adam Schiff comes out an hour later and says, well, okay, I'm going to announce that we got information in that briefing yesterday that you obviously went and told the president about, that there's something more than just circumstantial evidence. I mean, it is, and I wonder if even, who, for all we know, maybe Comey didn't give him everything because he had reason to be skeptical of what Nunes was going to do. I mean, you and I have talked about my sort of, which I think is, becoming clearer to me, theory that I think Comey released that Clinton letter just because he thought she was going to be president and he was going to end up indicting Donald Trump. And this is going to go to this is what I'm going to point to when we talk about I'm completely impartial. And I think it went horribly awry. I don't think the guy's terribly bright, and he was definitely breaking his own policies. But, that explanation is becoming clearer and clearer. And now I'm also starting to think that, when we heard from Manafort a couple of weeks ago when he had his denials, I never knowingly spoke to someone who was a Russian agent.
They don't wear badges.
They don't wear badges. I'm starting to think this whole thing has been about, Donald Trump is just dealing with his buddies in the Russian mafia, doing some money laundering maybe for them, which seems to be like in and out of Trump Tower. Not necessarily him, but literally people who have office space there. And one of his buddies said, like, hey, I know some hackers who can get this stuff. Oh, yeah, do it. I think when he was out there saying, like, I hope the Russian government does it, he was laughing to himself knowing that he had hired the guys. And as far as he was concerned,
a fat guy in New Jersey.
They were just Russian mafia guys who usually do this with credit cards. Honestly. And now I think he's finding out, like, oh, my God, I was talking to all these Russian agents. This is all speculation, but it would be irresponsible for us not to speculate right now.
Well, of course. And look, let's face facts here. I don't have any real suspicion that Donald Trump, went to Moscow and had secret meetings with Vladimir Putin, and they cooked this thing up as, some kind that he's an actual agent of the Russian government. I guess it's theoretically possible, but that is not where the vulnerability with Donald Trump ever lay. His problem is that he went broke in the 1990s after his Atlantic City debacle. He went bankrupt a bunch of times, and he couldn't lay his hands on money anymore. And this guy's a scammer, right? He's always kind of running on debt. He doesn't really have money, liquid money, that he can use to support his lavish lifestyle and the image that he wanted to project. So he had to get money somewhere. And where the money was in the mid 2000s, but when he was really struggling, and he's out there, hawking steaks and water and a bunch of low-end consumer products, right? I mean, a billionaire doesn't really need to do that. So he was desperate. And at that point where the money was really churning around was in this, among these Russian oligarch, Russian mob, those circles where all that money was
Right.
during the petro economy, right? I mean, this is when Russia was really cooking, and this particular group of kleptocrats and oligarchs were really raking in the big bucks.
And we should remind
That's
people
what
his
happened.
good buddy, his special advisor, literally the title was special advisor, was a guy named Felix Seder, who
Yes.
we now know was a Russian mobster, probably still is, who was being protected by the New York FBI because he was an informant. I mean, Loretta Lynch provided testimony or a letter for him when he was up on trial.
Yep.
And so, I mean, this is a guy who, this is, for all we know, he's sort of like a Whitey Bulger figure for the New York FBI. There's no doubt. I mean, I think largely speaking, to the extent that people in the Trump administration have been dealing with Russian agents, I don't think they knew this. I think they just thought they were dealing with criminals. And
and that's so much better, right?
Well, no, not necessarily. But I think that explanation to me makes a lot more sense than anything else, because I just don't think these people have the savvy. I think they were just in on, listen, when a Russian billionaire or whomever buys an apartment for $40 million more than it's worth,
Yeah.
a house, whatever it is, money laundering would be the first thing that this is about. It is, I'm willing to take a 25% hit on my cash because it's all stolen and I just gotta
Right.
get it into circulation. So I can sell this place 3 or 4 years from now and, I take a 20% hit. That's fine. That's, that's what I pay
Sure,
on my...
cost of doing business, right?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, exactly. You work with the Gambinos, you don't think it's Ed Koch.
Exactly. I mean, this is where, you and I have talked about this a lot over the past year. The astonishing fact that Donald Trump's finances were never really probed, and he became president of the United States. The fact that they remain this opaque, that his family's still making money off of this,
Yep.
that this is still, that he refused to divest, he refused to open the books, that he refused to release his tax returns. This whole thing is absolutely astonishing that this man is running. I mean, forget the Russians. It's not just them. He's exposed all over the planet
Yep.
to all kinds of people. I mean, he's exposed to this guy Duterte, who's a psychopath in the Philippines, right? I mean, he's got some deals going down there, and God only knows what these people, what kind of financial, entanglements he has with people like that. And he's the president of the United States, and that's kind of, I mean, to me, that, it's the old adage, like from All the President's Men, right? I mean, it's follow the money. The money will lead us to whatever happened with the Russians in this election, in my view, rather than, this idea that somehow or another somebody was, turned as a double agent or whatever. It's much more likely to me that all of this, and including Manafort. I mean, Manafort, he's obviously a key figure in all of this, and this information, I don't know if people know this, that this week there was a new revelation
Yes.
about Manafort, that he had signed a contract with Putin's personal oligarch. I mean, this guy is not just some guy who is in Putin's orbit. He is very, very, very close to Vladimir Putin. And he is the key oligarch in the Kremlin. And Manafort actually signed a contract with this guy to help with, what was it, publicizing democracy or something. I mean, it was,
Right.
and specifically to build up Putin in the U.S. and, kind of enhance his image. And it's a very, very lucrative contract. This wasn't just, a few $1,000s here and there. It was many millions of dollars that were involved. And this wasn't that long ago. This was, 2005 the contract was. It ran for God knows how long, until very recently. So, it's closing in on Manafort, and what's going to happen, I think, as you just pointed out, they're going to somebody's going to have to plead somewhere.
Right.
To, I was just being a criminal. I wasn't being a spy.
Yeah, I honestly, and I think that's true of even Manafort, frankly. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
What is clear is these are not really circumspect people, right? These are not like ultra cautious. These are not people who are practicing all sorts of like tradecraft. And I mean, this is the most careless bunch of people in the world who just think that they
Roger Stone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these are people who are just like, I think, who, clearly don't have an issue with organized crime figures. They operate in that world. They always feel like there's somebody they can pay off, that they can be, I just think that, and Donald Trump has shown like he's not, I believe he didn't vet anybody. That's not hard for me to believe. I don't think he has a clue as to like, with anything that's going on around here. And, So,
why would he have vetted members, business people or members of his campaign any better than he vetted, the people that he's put into his cabinet?
Right.
I mean, he just doesn't do that. He goes, as he said, and we haven't even talked about this insane interview he gave to Time Magazine, where he just said, I'm instinctual. I know how the world works. He basically said that, he is completely flying by the seat of his pants and has absolutely no idea what he's doing. And, that's how he's led his life.
Hey, everybody. Sam Seder here.
Donald Trump is a bad guy. Believe me. It's true.
It is true. And you can subscribe to this channel by subscribing to this channel. It's true.